Bet the Board.
What do you mean you don't bet? I mean, I don't bet. You know, I don't gamble. I don't. I never have, and I never will. Yeah, right. I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
It's the Bet the Board podcast.
God likes me. He really, really likes me.
In the end, I wound up right back where I started. I could still pick winners, and I could still make money for all kinds of people back home. And why mess up a good thing?
Here's Payne Insider and Todd Furman.
Welcome into the Bet the Board podcast, powered by FanDuel. NFL Week 4 Monday Night Football edition. I am your host, Todd Furman, joined by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider.
Monday morning blues.
I mean, do we play Monday morning quarterback? Because regardless of how the weekend went for us, it still probably played out a little bit better than it did for Nick Mullins last night in Sunday Night Football.
Oof. Ugly scene. Getting benched for CJ Beathard.
You have to let the dust settle on what I guess we can call one of the more frustrating Sundays of the season. Of course, we play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Looks great at the half. They can't score in the second half. Defense gets banged up. But alas, we're not crying over spilled milk around these parts. So, Payne, should we get into the good, bad, and the ugly, or do you have a rant or anything else that you want to start things off with today?
No, we get into the good, bad, and ugly whenever you're ready.
All right. We can't really pick on Dan Quinn yet because, of course, the Atlanta Falcons will be playing on Monday Night Football. So if he shits the bed for seemingly the third week in a row, we'll let you guys know come Thursday against the Green Bay Packers. We'll also touch a little bit briefly on the quarterback change for the New England Patriots for their trip to Kansas City as we get the rare Monday Night Football doubleheader. But Payne, good, bad, and the ugly, where we normally begin Monday's show. And I actually want to start with the good. And I think you have to give full marks to the Carolina Panthers, who not only ended their long losing streak 2 weeks ago, but now suddenly sitting at 500. And it looks like Matt Rule, Joe Brady on the same page. Maybe this team has a chance for a little bit of a push in the NFC.
They play hard. And they're always going to, I think, have a decent foundation for success. We've seen Matt Rule build up his programs at the college level. He seems to be doing the same thing here. He's got a locker room full of some pretty good players. And, you don't want to take anything away from what Carolina did. I think there's some struggles going on there on the Arizona side of the ball. But Teddy Bridgewater was able to move it around. Had the one bad interception when they were up 2 scores early in that game. But found the end zone finally for the good guys. I heard you had to start him because Cam went down this week. So positive there.
Yeah, a scramble touchdown, baby. Looked like Cam Newton, Michael Vick all rolled into one there with that 18-yard scamper.
How good is that to see, though, knowing the injury that plagued him? It was like Sam Darnold light touchdown run. A couple nice cuts there. But the offense looks pretty good. 6.2 yards per play, not bad. 46% success rate. Did have enough nice explosives out there, 5 through the air. It was good to see the pass game get going. There are some real nice weapons on that offense. So I think this only trends in the right direction. Now, the division's difficult, right? They're probably the third best in that division, but everything's being built the right way, as you would expect with Matt Rule. They're going to play tough. There's going to be a lot of accountability there, and it's a good start.
Do we give the Vikings credit for finally breaking through and getting their first win, or does it come with an asterisk knowing that they beat Bill O'Brien and the Houston Texans?
Justin Jefferson's really helped the Vikings offense get on track. That's what's going on here. You can't cheat on Adam Thielen anymore. You can't load the box to stop Dalvin. Jefferson has allowed Minnesota's offense to completely open up now. But it does help playing the Titans secondary, the Texans secondary back-to-back weeks, and then you get the Seahawks defense, which isn't anything to write home about here on Sunday Night Football, especially when you actually dig into that game a little bit. The Dolphins punted just one time. Unfortunately, Miami thought it was an EPL match, apparently. But the Vikings offense should, I think, continue their success this week. Obviously, you're going to hear the narratives of Cousins in prime time and Minnesota struggling in Seattle because they have their the past few seasons. But this time, obviously, a little bit different without fans. But you have to like what you're seeing from the Vikings offense. It's going to be needed, right? I do think to some level when Minnesota gets Danielle Hunter back and the young guys in that secondary start to get a little bit more acclimated to Zimmer's system, that there could be some slight improvement there's just not a lot of talent on that side of the ball right now. They lost a lot of guys, obviously, in free agency. A couple guys get injured. Too many young guys in the secondary at the corner spots. I just don't know how much more improved they can get, but we'll probably see a slight tick up.
Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, as you mentioned, account for 217 of the receiving yards of Kirk Cousins' total on the day, passing at 260. You have to wonder, Payne, if the Philadelphia Eagles right now are going, wonder if we'd rather have Justin Jefferson on our roster than Jalen Reagor.
Comparison's a little bit easier when one guy is on the IR, that is for sure. But
hey, one of the best, I don't know who the quote is, one of the best values you can have in the NFL is being available week to week. But
there you go.
Yes.
Justin Jefferson would be a nice touch to their offense.
Early on, I'm not going to take shots at a guy who's hurt dealing with some injuries. But in terms of other good performances, what were some of the things that stood out to you this weekend?
I think Justin Herbert. If you're a Chargers fan, you have to be thrilled with what you saw Sunday. First road start, you're going across the country. You're without two starting O-linemen. Your number 2 receiver there, Mike Williams. Austin Eckler went down very early in that game. And it's against one of the best defenses in the NFL in Tampa. And you just look at what Justin Herbert was able to do. Averaged 10.3 yards per pass attempt, had 3 explosives, completion percentage nearly 13% above expectation. And this really wasn't a game that was made easy for Herbert either. If you look, the Chargers offense averaged 8.6 yards to go on third down, still had a 40% success rate on third. Just kind of knowing that situation that Justin Herbert was up against, I thought he looked confident, he performed well. And Todd, as a Dolphins fan, feeling a little queasy.
Hey, let's not be queasy just yet. Let's wait until we see Tua unleash before you start to have buyer's remorse for the way things played out in terms of the Dolphins' chosen direction at the quarterback position. Do want to ask, though, about the Chargers. I mean, how much does this offense change, Payne, if Austin Eckler misses an extended period of time?
Yeah, it hurts, right? Joshua Kelly's certainly been the between the tackles runner, but you still want that added element of a pass catcher out of the backfield. And it's one thing that we discuss all the time, right? Getting the backs involved in the pass game, especially on early downs. I don't think Joshua Kelly has all the attributes, obviously, of Austin Eckler. So it's a perfect 1-2 punch. You now lose a lot of that with Austin Eckler. And that's a quarterback's best friend. Being able to throw on early downs to the running back, extremely efficient. So you're just going to have to rely a little bit more on guys like Hunter Henry. Hopefully Mike Williams returns as well. And then Joshua Kelly is going to have an expanded workload here.
Do we give the Cincinnati Bengals credit? Joe Burrow gets his first NFL win. They erase a 3-point deficit, trailing 13-10 at the break, and the offense looked pretty explosive in the second half, with Joe Mixon having a career day, going from being in the hospital on Saturday to being the game breaker and a thorn in our side all day Sunday afternoon.
Joe Burrow is good. Listen, the guy is confident. He's poised in the pocket. He is a leader. And there's a lot of those attributes that you just can't account for. You've heard veteran leaders in that Cincinnati locker room say since day one, Joe's held himself and as a leader, and we're kind of getting behind him. This past weekend, he was very good, obviously. Completion percentage, 13% above expectation. He had support from the ground game, as you mentioned. Defenses, for some reason, are still paying a lot of attention to A.J. Green. So T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd took advantage of that. But you look at this game, like Jacksonville was +6 in net passing success rate. They had more explosive passes than Cincinnati, but Burrow did a good job, I think, taking advantage of injuries. Jacksonville is not a great defense, but they've been good this year stopping the run and getting after the quarterback. But then you'll lose your top 2 corners. Henderson and Hayden go down. Miles Jack leaves. Probably, arguably, 3 of your best 4 or 5 defenders are out for that, second half with this Cincinnati surge. And then Joe Mixon kind of turned it on. And as you alluded to this, was in the hospital on Saturday. Question marks if he would play. And, you don't cry over spilt milk. You do your job. But these are ones that you like to have, right? When you get your money in at +3 and it closes pick at some of the sharpest shops in the world. And there are groups that are moving large sums of money and bettors that are some of the most infamous in our space getting down after you. It certainly makes you feel a little bit better. You just hope that you can catch some of those.
Hey, you think over the long haul, if you're taking 3 in NFL games that close pick, you're going to have a pretty high success rate. Unfortunately, there's nothing that's fail-proof in this business, as you and I have come to learn. And I think a lot of our listeners that have been with us from day one begin to understand that we're going to get the best of it. Sometimes the best laid plans don't come to fruition, but it sure as hell ain't going to stop us from doing everything we can to put ourselves in a position to win more often than not. In terms of other good performances, Payne, anything specific that really stuck out before we trend the other direction and look at some of the bad and the ugly efforts?
Yeah, let's talk about Drew Brees a little bit. And
the vertical passing game, suddenly alive and well.
Yeah, that was the guy we remember seeing. And I had a feeling, because we talked about this last Monday, right? That touchdown pass against Green Bay right before the half to Emmanuel Sanders seemed to kind of reset everything. And I texted you at halftime last Sunday. I said, I think we're in a really good spot after seeing that pass. Like, you could just tell the confidence had changed a little bit. And listen, no one's going to confuse Drew Brees' arm with Patty Mahomes. And you could see Brees kind of doubting himself a little bit the first couple weeks because, the cast of weapons. Once Michael Thomas goes down, there's not this familiarity. So you have this combination of Drew Brees not knowing where guys are going to be, and then, the arm strength, he was doubting himself a little bit. This offense is more about rhythm and consistency, and Brees knowing where guys are supposed to be so he can anticipate the throw a little bit more to make up for the lack of the arm. And when he wasn't quite sure where guys were going to be, it led to a lot of dink and dunk football. And I get it, right? It's the Lions secondary, but we didn't see check down Charlie this week. Brees was very good, 13% above expectation with completion rate. The Saints had a 59% success rate through the air. And the biggest one, 8.4 yards per pass attempt. Did it without Michael Thomas, without Jared Cook. So a good sign there for the Saints offense.
Hey, you have to hope that this team, we know, oftentimes start the season slowly, but guess what? You don't win a Lombardi trophy by playing good football in September and October. You figure out your team's identity, and ultimately you build on that going forward. I have to imagine Drew Brees developing the chemistry and camaraderie, so to speak, as you mentioned, will only be more pronounced when Michael Thomas comes back into the fold, and suddenly you have to respect Traquan Smith, Emmanuel Sanders, and all of the other weapons that the Saints have going for him. With the good, though, Payne, comes the bad, and I think the most logical place to start is with a historically bad defensive performance yet again from the Dallas Cowboys, who give up 508 total yards to the Cleveland Browns, 307 on the ground. By my math, that's almost 8 yards per carry. And when you look at Dallas, they're the first team since Oakland back in 2012 to allow at least 38 points in 3 straight games in the same season. And the 307 rushing yards that Cleveland had were the most the Cowboys have ever allowed in a single football game.
Ugly scene there. And I think they'll have to figure out the situation with Mike Nolan. Obviously not calling for his job now, but that was the one hire that was a big question mark. He was obviously out of football. Mike McCarthy brings him back. There was talks and things internally that apparently Mike McCarthy was repaying Mike Nolan a favor for giving him his first job. So I don't know if he's qualified. Let's just kind of put it that way. Now, obviously, the injuries have hit the Cowboys defense, but that's just a pathetic effort. I mean, if you look overall yesterday, you certainly had a lot of the explosive plays, 11 explosive runs. You gave up 1 through the air, but 12 explosive plays. But not just that, down to down, you were bad too. Cleveland had a 62% success rate on offense, so they were doing whatever they wanted. I don't know where Dallas's defense turns from here. Your hope is that you get a little bit healthier, you get a couple guys back from suspension. I just don't know what Mike Nolan's going to do for this defense, honestly, at this point. So it needs to be a team that outscores opponents. But you need to start having some level of resistance, and it just wasn't there.
I mean,
but I do think you tip your cap, right, to Cleveland a little bit.
I do have to give them credit. I mean, they're starting to take on the DNA of their head coach, and I wasn't quite sure how long it was going to take. for them to try and mirror what Kevin Stefanski wants to do and what he was able to execute last year in Minnesota. But, I mean, Nick Chubb gets hurt, leaves the game. It doesn't matter. Kareem Hunt goes nuts. Dearness Johnson off the scrap heap runs for damn near 100 yards. And while I want to point the fingers at the Cowboys defense, somewhere along the way, you do have to give the Browns credit for their scheme. They get Odell Beckham involved. He has his first 3 touchdown game since 2015. So the Browns did a lot to put stress on this Cowboys defense. But yeah, you do wonder when Dallas is going to be able to hold opposition to less than 30 points, knowing how prolific their offense has been.
Absolutely. Listen, you know, the one thing that I'm seeing from Stefanski, which we saw yesterday on full display, just because he's going to run the ball, he's got some creativity within it. And I thought it was great getting OBJ involved. There was some clamoring that him and Jarvis weren't touching the ball enough. You got to keep those guys happy, because when they're not, it's not the best thing to have happen. But yeah, it didn't matter. Nick Chubb goes down. 7.7 yards per rush, a 73% success rate on the ground. And again, as I alluded to, 11 explosive runs, 3 rushing touchdowns. So I just like what I'm seeing from that offense. And now for Cleveland, just a matter of getting guys healthier on the defensive side of the ball, getting guys back like Mack Wilson at linebacker, and hopefully Greedy Williams in the secondary help improve that unit a little bit.
Yeah, a team can only trend up, in my opinion, as long as Baker Mayfield plays within the system. They don't ask him to do too much. The ground game gets established. We knew the offensive line was addressed in the offseason, and as you mentioned, the secondary had really been their Achilles heel, and that unit should only get better once they get more healthy bodies out there. One player, Payne, who really disappointed me, and I'm not sure where you point the finger, and we kind of touched on it a little bit when we were giving Carolina praise for their effort and their outright win as a 3-point dog hosting Arizona. But Kyler Murray struggles yet again. 24 of 31, 133 yards, averages well under 5 yards per pass attempt. You talked last week about how inefficient he has been. We knew that DeAndre Hopkins wasn't going to be 100%, 7 catches, 41 yards. When you have a weapon like that, he can't just be a possession receiver. What have you seen in Arizona that's just not working right now?
Kyler Murray.
I
mean, you know, again, average completed air yards, 3.1 yesterday. And I'm not sure how you go 24 for 31 for 133. Carolina came into yesterday's game 28th in defensive pass efficiency, and there was just one explosive pass on the day for Kyler. And this isn't just a one-week thing. Kyler's averaging right now less than 4.9 air yards completed. His aggression rate is one of the lowest in football. And when Kyler has been aggressive, he's completed 6 of 23 passes of 16 or more yards downfield. If it's not for his legs blinding everyone, we would be talking about why Kyler Murray is regressing in year 2 of a system with DeAndre Hopkins. It's a little bit of a concern.
I mean, he reminds me right now, when you watch him out there with his pocket presence and lack of awareness, of Josh Allen, where he was before he took the next step in his evolution, and you thought that Kyler Murray was going to be ahead of the curve. And as you mentioned, the fact that, hey, look, the legs are masking some of those deficiencies, and when you look at his overall stat line from a fantasy perspective, it's outstanding yesterday. But in reality, anyone who watched that football game has to sit there, shake their head, and go, this Arizona offense ain't going to take the next step. And we'll see exactly how they look for their second straight game on the East Coast when they take on the New York Jets this weekend.
Absolutely. And you should this should be a get-right game, right? Brett Rippon, third string quarterback on a short week, hangs 37. This needs to be a spot where Arizona answers some of those questions offensively.
And we'll get to that in the look-ahead lines, because if we believe it's a get-right game, the market may have slight disagreement from where that number opened and how it's trending. Anything else that really disappointed you in terms of bad performances through week 4?
Listen, I think we have to look to Nick Foles and the Bears offense. I'm not sure what I saw there. Matt Nagy was horrific, and I think we talked about this touch on Thursday, that there isn't this Trubisky crutch to lean on. You can't just use him as the excuse of your offense not being creative and not taking chances. Nagy did a horrible job getting Foles in form yesterday. The playbook didn't look like it was expanded. The pace was snail-like through the first 3 quarters. Even in the first half alone, Chicago was 26th in pace. To me, you bring back Nick Foles because you trust him. But you look in the first half, on first and second down, Chicago ran the ball 10 times. 2 of them graded successful. They passed it 12 times on first down. 8 were successful. I just don't get what I watch from some of these coaches out there. You bring in Nick Foles for a reason. You literally handpicked him. And then you wanted to start him, but for optics you couldn't. And now you get him, and it's slow pace. It's lots of running on first and second down with no success. Meanwhile, when you do throw on first and second down, it was quite successful. I just don't get what I saw from Chicago's offense yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything pretty, that's for sure. And the Bears apparently feeling like, hey, look, we'll get down by 16 points against everybody and come back. When you play a team like the Indianapolis Colts, it's a slightly different experience, trailing by 2+ scores in the fourth quarter than it is against the Detroit Lions and the Atlanta Falcons, that's for sure. Because let's be honest here, the Colts weren't exactly dynamic offensively in their own right, settling for 4 field goals. Phillip Rivers looking erratic at best, and Jonathan Taylor finishing the day with 0 broken tackles, yet Indianapolis able to win that game relatively comfortably. From the bad Payne, obviously there's some ugly, and I guess the Jets on Thursday night become low-hanging fruit, averaging less than 5 yards per play, 11 penalties, 118 yards. And I mean, when you win the turnover battle against a mediocre to bad team with a +3 differential, you shouldn't be losing games at this level by 9 points.
No, I'm not sure what's going on, obviously, with the Jets and why Adam Gase is still there. You would think Joe Douglas would want to remove him just so you can have that situation gone. What we're seeing, really, from the Jets offensively is a lack of creativity. And then there also aren't a lot of weapons. And Sam Darnold isn't consistent at this point. And it's all coming together, and this is what you get to see with your own 2 eyes. It's that trio of things. And you can pin it all on Adam Gase, and a lot of it he is responsible for because he hasn't really helped Sam Darnold improve, and he's not putting him in the best situations to succeed. But there also is a lack of talent here. But it's just not a disciplined football team. There's not this cohesion between offensive coach and defensive coach. There's some issues, obviously, defensively as well. I thought the Jets last year overachieved with that 10th place efficiency rank defensively. You lose 2 key cogs heading into the season, and there was going to be regression anyways. So this is kind of what we're seeing unfold for the Jets here. But as you kind of mentioned there a couple minutes ago, are taking at least some early money this week. 7.5's gone in the market.
If we're being critical of the Jets, where does it start with the Detroit Lions, who have earned the dubious distinction now of being the first NFL team to lose 6 straight games in which it led by double digits? If you're going to crash and burn, Payne, you may as well do it in remarkable fashion.
Yeah, this isn't really surprising to us. I think when you look at when you want to back Detroit, it's early on in these games. Darrell Bevell has come out with very, very good game plans. Matthew Stafford has attacked aggressively early on in games, but for some reason, as it moves on, whether it's instructions from the head coach, it gets a little bit more conservative. And this wasn't a game where you could be conservative, especially when we talked about not just the injuries on the Saints offense, but their defense. They were without their top 2 corners. They were without a starting safety. This is a game where you had to build the lead, get out, and continue to be aggressive, kind of taking advantage of those secondary injuries for the Saints defense. So I'm not quite sure what we saw there from Detroit's offense overall. Pretty pathetic past the opening stanza of the 14-point lead, and then the defense, right? Like, you know, I don't know what Matt Patricia's doing. This is a guy that's probably going to be fired here before the end of the season. I can't see how he keeps his job, gives up 35 unanswered to the Saints without 2 of their best weapons. I'm not sure what to make of Detroit. It's a team that seems to they just can't get out of their own way. And we saw this a little bit last year. I think there was that metric or number that we discussed a little bit that through 13 weeks last year, other than Kansas City, they were the only team that led for some part of the second half And through 13 weeks, it was just them in Kansas City in that high regard, and they just couldn't finish games. So that's kind of what we're seeing from Detroit at this point.
You're not going to win a whole lot of football games, as you mentioned. You give up 35 unanswered, and those 35 answered came on 5 consecutive touchdown drives for the Saints, taking a 14-0 lead and turning it into a 3-touchdown deficit before the final score, a little bit misleading from a cosmetic standpoint, as they lose that game 35-29. You can follow Payne on Twitter at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. You can follow me there at BetTheBoardPod is the podcast Twitter feed, and make sure you're paying attention there for all the announcements and a lot of fun stuff coming down the chute sooner rather than later as well. Payne, when we look at some of the look-ahead numbers at FanDuel, I mean, you've seen the market adjust, not comprehensive adjustment across the board, but there were a few games that really stood out. And we can start with the Thursday night affair, one that we'll cover in greater detail a couple of days from now. Your look-ahead price had Tampa a modest field goal favorite on the road at Soldier Field taking on the Bears. This number has ballooned out to the Bucs, a 5.5-point chalk amid their 17-point comeback against the Chargers.
Yeah, that's it, right? Tampa right now is a public team. They have the come-from-behind win. Depending on what number you had, you potentially covered it. There was some 6.5 out there at some points in the week, so that was a game where, books took sharp money on the Chargers at 7.5, and then there was some money from the public at 6.5 there in Tampa as well, so paid out 2 sides on that game a couple different times. I think this has mostly everything to do with the Bears at this point. Their offense was absolutely dreadful, as we kind of talked about. You're hoping that Matt Nagy allows Nick Foles to be a little bit more aggressive, come out with some tempo, get him in form early, get him throwing on early downs, and hopefully you'll have some success here. But the increase in number will be very interesting. The 6s that were out there haven't lasted yet, so I'm not sure where we're going to end up. We'll have a little better idea, I think, when we discuss this game on Thursday. A little early money coming in on this under. Not surprising, right? When you one thing I think past this game specifically, if you are someone that is looking to time markets and your entry, I think it's really important you gauge each week where money continues to come in. And we've seen now for 2 weeks money come in on Buccaneers unders, so it shouldn't be a surprise that it came again this week against a Bears team that has a decent defense on a short week. So those are always like little tidbits that I think you should be marking down as a better yourself, finding out where money comes in on these teams and then kind of helping it using it to help you kind of figure out when to time your market entry in preceding weeks.
The interesting part about that total is probably the biggest pros versus Joes disparity, with the general public seeing Tom Brady continuing to bet that game over regardless of the number. Professionals had a buy point, like you said, in the low 40s. We did see a little bit of resistance, that 41.5, before it ultimately settled in that 42.5 range. One look ahead line to kind of a New York state of mind as we'll hit both New York teams. We mentioned it earlier. You saw the Arizona Cardinals open as an 8.5-point favorite at FanDuel. That number has dipped down below a touchdown. Cardinals a 6.5-point favorite on the road. Some speculation about who the Jets will be using as starting quarterback. I'd be led to believe that it's going to be Sam Darnold, but if you read some of the reports out there, he's dealing with a bit of a sprained shoulder, which could be touch and go to see how he progresses throughout the week.
Yeah, there's really nothing there for me at this number, as we kind of discussed already. Open 7.5. I've seen some early Jets money through that key. We'll have to monitor the situation with Sam Darnold. But you do have Joe Flacco, baby, the wily veteran. So, again, hopefully, if you're a Cardinals fan, that this would be a get-right game for Kyler Murray. Some concerning things, but again, if Brett Rippon can go in there on a short week Thursday night game and light up the Jets defense, it would be really concerning if Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offense weren't able to do the same.
Yeah, nothing says bringing offense into 2020 like starting Joe Flacco at quarterback in a pinch, paired alongside the ageless wonder in Frank Gore. When you talk about explosive big play potential, those two, for everything they've accomplished in their illustrious careers, probably wouldn't be the poster children for said example. The other New York team has also seen a shift in their pricing. The Cowboys, on a look-ahead number, were an 11.5-point favorite. But as we look at this number now for the Giants' trip to Dallas, right at FanDuel, you're seeing the Cowboys a 9.5-point favorite here.
Yeah. Jason Garrett revenge game, baby.
Yeah. I mean, let's see what we get from the Let's see what we get from the Cowboys defense.
A spot here. This is an interesting one. I just don't know. It's obviously very difficult to lay double digits with that kind of defense. You know, you're always going to need to be up something like 14, 17 to feel comfortable laying 11 with that defense. It makes it a little bit more difficult. Obviously, a division game in one that Jason Garrett has had circled, and I'm sure if some of these guys are fans of Jason Garrett, they'll rally around him here. It was a decent effort against the Rams last week, probably more the Rams asleep at the wheel, but Daniel Jones and the Giants played tough. They had a chance there to tie it late. Costly interception inside the 10, but big division game with lots of familiarity.
Yeah, no love lost between those two teams, especially the coaching staff. So it'll be interesting to see that game take place on Sunday afternoon. But of course, before we get to Week 5 games, we do have 2 games to wrap up Week 4 of the National Football League schedule. And Payne, we obviously previewed the New England-Kansas City game in great detail on Thursday. A lot of people can go back to listen to that particular breakdown should they so choose. But, of course, the quarterback situation has changed, and we've seen the market adjust accordingly as well. Kansas City now a 10.5-point favorite at FanDuel, total down from 49 from where it was in the low 50s with Cam Newton. And, of course, New England in the unenviable spot of not just having testing, the poking and prodding that comes along with that, but having to travel the day of the game against the defending Super Bowl champs. When you look at the way the market's responded side and total, do you think it's strong enough moves without going into some of the X's and O's?
Yeah, we already broke this game down pretty extensively. The New England right now is actually in flight to Kansas City as we are recording this at about 10:30 a.m. So
get off the bus and go play a game. Let's go. Strap the pads on, travel like you had to do in high school football, and call it a day.
Yes. And I think a lot of people were expecting Jarrett Stidham. That doesn't appear to be the case. We'll see. But I mean, I'm hearing Brian Hoyer. The one thing about this is, right, the reps. What reps has any quarterback gotten this week for New England that were extensive? What game plan was put in prior to finding out that Cam Newton wasn't going to be able to play? And we know the last 2 days, because of all the testing and kind of separation, I don't know how much New England's been able to work on things based on the quarterbacks that are going to be playing in this game. And the one element that we thought was vital for New England in this game was playing somewhat of a keep-away game, executing the ground game. And it's more difficult to do that if Brian Hoyer's getting the start than obviously Cam Newton. That added layer of Cam's legs in a game like this are humongous. And the one thing that we touched on a little bit in the offseason, Todd, when we looked at this receiver group for New England, we said, hey, past Julian Edelman, there really isn't much here, but the benefit that Cam brings is that you have to play defense to defend his legs, which means more guys in the box. It means more area for receivers that potentially have trouble to separate to get open. Now you don't have Cam's legs, and we go back to the receiving core probably on the outside, having a little bit issues with more defenders in the secondary. So we obviously have seen an adjustment at this point. We're looking at about 3.5 in the actual number, more when you look at the value of, going over the 7 and over the 10. And we've seen this total come down from about 53.5 down to 49, which makes some sense as well. And the other area that we look at this, Todd, is we thought Kansas City would be on the short week. That extra day now of rest kind of negates that a little bit as well.
It is definitely interesting when you talk about all the dynamics in play for this football game. Of course, we'll see it center stage on CBS at 7 o'clock Eastern, getting to about halftime before the main Monday Night Football affair kicks off. Before you do any of that, folks, I encourage you to go check out the FanDuel Sportsbook. Plenty of risk-free bonuses that are available in states where they do apply. A great tool to see where the numbers are early in the week. Keep tabs on them throughout the week and try and match your wits against what the market tells you. FanDuel, one of the best tools out there for any sports books available to you, our loyal listeners. And Payne, the Main Monday night game, of course, the Green Bay Packers against the Atlanta Falcons. You're looking at Green Bay, a 6-point favorite at FanDuel now. Total in this game, 56.5. Of course, we've seen a little bit of movement early this morning as one key contributor of the Green Bay Packers has officially been ruled out for this contest.
Been movement all week. Under and dog. And it's likely because of a lot of factors. Obviously, you mentioned the big one there, but Devontae Adams, as we started to record, is out for this one, and we know Alan Lazard as well was placed on IR with an oblique injury. So 2 key weapons out for Green Bay's offense, and then you just kind of look at the difference of spots here, right? 3-0 versus an 0-3 desperate team. We've been kind of clamoring for Atlanta to get things turned around, but again, in terms of the betting market, this isn't a shock. If you've kind of paid attention over the last year plus, Falcons seem to be one of the wise guys' favorite teams. So in terms of the number here, Todd, not shocking that we are seeing money for supporting the Falcons and a little bit of under money here come in at, from the open of 58. Now, this isn't going to be a defensive, rock fight by any stretch, but there aren't very many models that are indicating 58 has value to go over. So that's kind of what we've seen here, at least from a numbers perspective.
And when you look at the game matchup-wise, Matt LaFleur, of course, a lot of familiarity with Dan Quinn, spent years working under Quinn as a member of the Falcons staff as a quarterback coach there back in 2015, 2016. And what's interesting about Green Bay, for as critical as we've been of LaFleur, a victory Monday would give him a 17-3 career record and put him in a 4-way tie for second place with Paul Brown, Guy Chamberlain, and Dick Rauch for most wins by a head coach after just 20 games. Meanwhile, you look at the Falcons on the other side, Payne, they have that dubious distinction of accomplishing NFL history, becoming the first team to lose consecutive games in which it led by at least 15 points in the fourth quarter. I guess we talked a little bit about the number, and we'll get into some of the matchups, but how do you begin going about trying to assess what Atlanta is, knowing that this team's record indicates 0-3, but if you don't have those 2 collapses, we're suddenly talking about the Falcons at 2-1, very much a threat with a chance to go on the road, pull off an upset, and move to 3-1 on the young season.
Yeah, and again, that's partly why we're seeing this number come down. I don't think people believe Atlanta is as bad as the numbers indicate, but I can tell you defensively, if you remember last, when we broke down this Falcons team on our preview podcast, we said some of the defensive improvements the latter half of the season after the bye might not be predictive of a surge this season, because where they were really good was on third down and in the red zone. They were still horrific on early downs. And the same thing here, even when you're looking at the Falcons defense and we're talking about surrendering these late leads, they're still in the bottom 6 in both rushing and passing success rate the first 3 quarters of the season so far. So they're not really doing anything over the first 3 quarters either, defensively. And when you look at this matchup with the Packers offense, we obviously have an Aaron Rodgers right now that's playing out of his mind through 3 games. It's difficult to see that change tonight, even with some key weapons out, although it's certainly going to help things. But I think we talked a little bit about what Rodgers identified during the COVID lockdown. And he said he started studying some of his film from his MVP season and spotted some things that he was doing. Now, he wouldn't obviously divulge what those were, whether it was a tell or whether it was something in his mechanics. But Rodgers is playing out of his mind, and I think to your point there, we have to start giving Matt LaFleur some credit. And these two are now together for a second season. Everything seems to be clicking right now. And I think if Atlanta has a single prayer defensively tonight, they got to start getting pressure on Aaron Rodgers. That's going to be the key. Small sample, but this is actually where Dan Quinn's defense has improved a little bit. Shockingly, they're top 6 right now, Atlanta is, in both pass rush win rate and pressure rate. And that's going to be the key to this matchup now when you look at some of those weapons that aren't there on the outside. If Atlanta can then get pressure, it's really going to bode well. But Green Bay's offensive line, again, also a shocker to me when you lose Brian Bulaga. Small sample size, just 3 games, but they're number 1 in NFL pass block win rate. Rodgers has only been pressured on 21% of his dropbacks. A lot of this matchup is going to come down to that. Now, again, I'm not sure Green Bay's O-line is as good as some of the numbers indicate because look at the defensive lines they faced so far. It's Detroit, it's Minnesota without Danielle Hunter and a slew of guys they lost this offseason, and it's New Orleans defensive line. Right now, those teams are 31st, 27th, and 21st in pressure rate. So Atlanta's got to figure out how to get pressure. Again, fortunately, though, right, you don't have Allen Lazard tonight. That's Rodgers' favorite target. Devontae Adams did practice all week on a limited basis, but again, Adam Schefter announced that he's going to be out. It's a little bit of a different decision. You texted me this yesterday, Todd, and it was a good point, right? The decision on Devontae Adams is a little different if you're 0-3 and desperate than it is if you're 3-0 with a bye week on deck and nearly a touchdown favorite tonight. So I think that did play a role, despite Matt LaFleur coming out and saying, hey, if he's ready, he's ready. If he's 100%, like, he's going. But there are some of those extra elements there on why he's not in this game. Now, one thing that you also have to credit LaFleur about, and I was shocked, I dug this up this morning, is his offense has been really versatile. He is changing up formations. He's keeping defenses on their heels. He's ran 11 formation at a 36% clip, 12 formation at a 25% clip, 21 formation at a 28% clip. He's even ran 13 formation at a 10% clip. You really have to game plan for a very diverse offense right now. And I think when you look at some of those formations, and again, 2 top targets down, but they still could present some issues because Atlanta right now has not been able to stop runs from 3 wide sets, along 5.7 a carry, 60% success rate with 3 rushing touchdowns allowed. Green Bay, 62% rushing success rate from 3 wide sets. When Green Bay does use their 2 tight end sets, they're averaging 9 air yards per pass attempt with a 119 passer rating. Quarterbacks have a 132 passer rating against Atlanta when they throw it from 2 tight end sets. So those are some of the matchups that you're going to want to watch tonight. But the key is this entire side of the ball, you got to get pressure on Rodgers. And then the other thing, the Falcons defense has been horrific in the red zone defensively. Worst red zone defense. So you got to hold the 3 as well.
On the other side of the ball, when you look at this Falcons team, you talk about desperation not resonating with Green Bay and the luxury they have of sitting Devontae Adams, getting him a couple more weeks of rest to make sure that hamstring is 100%. The Falcons, well, they have to get off the schneid. And when you look at this team playmaker-wise, we know they have them in spades. Now, of course, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley both been upgraded. We fully expect them to be out there. We know Russell Gage was in concussion protocol, but they should have all of these guys at their disposal. They showed last week that they were able to run the ball a little bit against the Bears. Todd Gurley, 14 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. How do you go about attacking a Green Bay defense and a secondary Payne that we thought was going to be the strength coming into the season, but has really struggled at least for the first couple weeks?
Don't talk bad about my guy, Alexander.
Well, he may be the only one out there because you look at the rest of the defense, it ain't good for what's going on up there in Packerland.
So, listen, there isn't this onus to play catch up as much as you probably anticipated with some of those injuries for Green Bay's offense, but they have to play catch up tonight. I think they have to keep pace. What I have seen so far from Atlanta's offense and what some of the numbers indicate, and this probably surprised some people when you think about the perception of Atlanta that it's this blazing offensive team with all this production. It's not what I've grown accustomed to seeing from Atlanta's offense. This is, again, just a 3-game sample, but the talent is off the charts. Maybe we see a little bit of an outbreak right now, but below average in total offensive efficiency for Atlanta. Below average in both passing and rushing efficiency. Early down success rate, something that is very predictive. Atlanta's just 22nd in that category. And that's one of those, again, things that we're looking at to kind of gauge teams on how they can be moving forward. Because, again, third downs are very swingy down. I would expect all the weapons to be there, right? At 0-3, even though they've been practicing on a limited basis, I would expect both Julio and Ridley to suit up. This feels like desperation mode. If Dirk Cutter's devising a game plan, to your point here, Todd, it shouldn't be an overly difficult one. You want to pass with play action because the pass rush from Green Bay shrivels when they have to face play action passes. When you run, as we've talked about, you want to attack the edges. Force the Smith brothers to kind of set the edge and not get pushed inside. Right now, with Kenny Clark missing some extended time as well, Green Bay hasn't been great stopping runs over the center and right guard either. I don't know his status of tonight. It's been limited. The injury stuff is really tough to follow in this game. This just has to be a get-right game for Atlanta's offense. Mike Pettine's defense, to your point, has been abysmal. through 3 weeks, 28th in overall defensive efficiency. The Packers' calling card and how they've kind of been constructed and built is to play with a lead, but the pass rush isn't getting home either. 28th in pass rush win rate, and that is correlated to a 17% pressure rate. So it hasn't been good getting after the quarterback either for Green Bay. I think when you're looking, again, passing with play action really hurts Green Bay's defense. You need more of that tonight. There hasn't been a lot of throwing from Matt Ryan with play action, just 22% of the time. That number needs to be above 35% tonight. If this is a neutral state game, meaning like, either team is up one score or less. And it's not just because the Packers struggle there, but it looks like that's what Matt Ryan's been crushing with this season, with play action. 138 passer rating, 52 points higher than Ryan throwing with no play action, averaging almost 4 yards per pass attempt more with play action. There's a couple other things here that are minor but worth looking at. Dirk Cutter, he has been hunting big plays on first down off of play action. Falcons have 10 explosives this season through the air on first down passes, second most in the league. Green Bay, 30th in the league defending explosive passes on first down. So watch out for that down. Maybe Atlanta tries to sneak a couple big ones in there through the air on first down. Final thing, obviously, here, Todd, Christian Kirksey, Packers middle linebacker, is on IR. Now, you mentioned some of the running backs with Todd Gurley and Brian Hill. Neither of them are going to be confused for Alvin Kamara. But if you're looking at Green Bay...
How dare you?
By the way, I just love watching Alvin Kamara. Like, it's just like he's back. He is healthy. He's happy. He's paid. He's like smiling. He's got about $1.5 million in his mouth. It looks awesome. So, you're looking at this. Green Bay right now has allowed 24 of a possible 28 running back targets to be caught, nearly 10 yards of reception. Even if you back out Kamara's like ridiculous 52-yard receiving touchdown, Green Bay still giving up nearly 8 yards of reception to running back. So Brian Hill, Todd Gurley, obviously not as good as Alvin Kamara, but to a little bit of a lesser extent, need to be involved in the pass game as well tonight with Kirksey out. So there are some areas where you can really attack this Green Bay Packers defense. The other thing here that's somewhat concerning, and I don't know if it's maintenance day or what, but Jair Alexander practiced all week. Then threw in a DNP on Saturday. He's dealing with a knee and a hand injury. Always weird when you get the practice all week and then the DNP late in the week. Maybe it's a re-aggravation, you don't know, but something to monitor here as well with Jair Alexander.
Well, speaking of that, you did have one of those on the offensive side as well. Corey Linsley appears on the injury report for the first time all week, the Packers center on Saturday. So you begs the question, what exactly is going on and what potential manipulation is there? Or is
it's
the very
an absolute
real chance
mess with injuries this year, Todd. I mean, it's difficult.
So we'll see exactly who's out there. We know the Green Bay Packers off to a torrid start. The Atlanta Falcons trying to do everything they can to right the ship, and we'll see if they're able to execute effectively in prime time. Anything else, Payne, that we didn't touch on for either of the Monday Night Football games that you'd like to add to make sure that we can put a bow on comprehensive analysis, providing our listeners with everything they'll need to make informed choices?
No, I mean, I wish I had something, but I haven't bet either of these games yet. I know, Todd, you and I, full disclosure, kind of discussed Atlanta. They are a little beaten and battered on the defensive side of the ball as well. About 4 starters out tonight on that side of the ball, so that caused some hesitation. But again, obviously, right, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the odds screen. We have seen some under money and dog money there on the Falcons at 6. Obviously, a much different ask than the 7.5, but certainly a desperation game for the Falcons here. But I have not played either game, either side or total.
Never thought I'd live to see the day that Falcons and under were a correlated parlay that bettors were trying to take advantage of.
Not too many games open 58 either.
No. That is well, they may soon. Who knows the way the league is trending. But either way, it should be 2 fun games to watch as we continue to figure out more about the Patriots' identity, albeit one without Cam Newton tonight. And of course, if the Green Bay Packers can keep the hot hand headed into the early bye week to have the best record in the NFL remaining without a single blemish on their resume. All right, Mr. Payne, I think that just about does it for a little Monday edition of our Bet the Board podcast as we wrap up week 4 of the National Football League season. Of course, we'll be back on Wednesday with some college football and finally a handful of marquee matchups that I know we can sink our teeth into. So really looking forward to that. Anything else you want to share before we get out of Dodge?
No, that's everything.
You got it. For Payne Insider, you can follow him on Twitter at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. You can follow me there. Follow the podcast as well at Bet the Board Pod, and be sure to download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. If you're in states that allow legal wagering, take full advantage of all their generous bonuses. Even if you're not, it's a great way to check lines throughout the course of the week and figure out where the market's going before it gets there. Best of luck with all your selections in the tandem of Monday Night Football games. We didn't have to hear Payne go in any baseball rants either, but should you choose to dabble there, hopefully we see you at the window.
Thanks for listening to Bet the Board. You can catch Todd and Payne every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday during football season, breaking down the biggest NFL and college football games. And to make sure you don't miss any free best bets, subscribe to Bet the Board on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.